Hello, hello, and welcome to Saturday Soundbites. I'm your host, Veronica Sofer. So excited to be here because we get to talk about all things involving visibility strategy, including public relations, advertising, marketing, networking, all that branding, all that really good content that you need to make sure that you get seen by your target audience and convey a message that's going to land you sales. So I'm so excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking about brand voice, how you need to build it, what you need to know about it, and all those juicy pieces of information that are going to really help you grow in your business. So I'm very excited about my guest today. But before we get started, let's take care of some housekeeping. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of Saturday Soundbites. And if you are watching on YouTube or on Facebook, drop us some comments. Make sure to tag us, and my guests and I will certainly circle back to make sure that we get all your questions answered and make connections. And of course, if you catch us on the replay, hashtag replay. So we know that you got a chance to take in all this great content. So very excited to invite Miss Peachi Williams to Saturday Soundbites.
Hi.
Thank you, Peachy, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Veronica. How are you today?
I am so good. And I'm so thrilled that we're going to be talking about branding because that's so important to your visibility strategy. But before you start giving us all those great tips, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am also known as the brand voice builder. It is trademarked. I talk about that
Good
a
for
lot.
you.
But one of the things that I do is I'm a copywriter by trade, and I help corporations. Well, I used to help large corporations build their brand voices and build their entire brand platform. So as a result, as I started talking to more entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and small business owners about branding, everybody seemed very confused. One of the things that I noticed is that they have half of the equation, or they get bits and pieces, but they don't have a platform, or nobody's really telling them like the real deal on the other side of what goes beyond your logo or what goes
Mhm.
beyond your colors. And although you hear people talk about brand voice or people talk about mission and vision, there is no one comprehensive, at least I've not found one comprehensive place where they can just get it all. And that's where I come in.
I think that's so fantastic. And I love that it's an all encompassing because you've got to have that copywriting background sometimes to be able to make sure that the words are complementing and aligned, the brand, the color, all those things, the fonts, all those things that bring all that together. So I love Peachy that you have all of that together in one place.
Yes, and it's been a journey because I've been known to give all the things, but I'm a real stickler on do the work. Make sure you roll up your sleeves and do the work because you'll notice the payoffs in ways you hadn't even imagined.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, Peachy, talk us through the process, right? So, you've decided you are an entrepreneur, and you have decided you're going to launch out on your own. Tell us what those first few steps are when it comes to branding.
Okay, well, one of the things people need to understand is you can't have a brand if you don't know where you're going. And so I tell people all the time, you need to know your why. But once you know your why, you need to know the why behind the why. And a lot of people look very confused when you say you need to know the why behind your why. Most of the time, when people have their whys in place, there's a component missing. They don't take
Mm-hmm.
the time to actually realize, like, well, I said this is why I want to do it, but why do I want to do it? And so it's a process of self-assessment. I tell everybody, do a SWOT on yourself personally before you even start building a brand, before you even start a
Right.
business, because there may be some things in that SWOT analysis that could actually affect your brand negatively that you didn't
Yes.
even realize. So I tell people, every quarter do a SWOT analysis on yourself and then do a SWOT analysis on your brand. So
Mhm.
that's the foundation. So once you're starting from there, the why behind the why, of course, then you need to know the vision. And I think people get the vision and mission. They kind of try and interlope them together, where you need to know the vision in order to have the mission. So
Mhm.
people should recognize that the vision is the end game or the evolving end game, but the mission is how you're going to actually get there.
Yes, that is so true. And for those of us who have spent way too much time doing SWOT analyses professionally, what advice would you give to someone who isn't used to doing one? What does a simple SWOT analysis look like for an online business owner?
Well, for an online business owner, it's very simple. Even 1 or 2 points, think about your strengths. Where are you strong? Think about your weaknesses. What could affect your actual business? And then
Mhm.
look at opportunities and look. think out of the box when you're talking about opportunities. You can find opportunities in everything. You don't have to follow the masses because this is your own journey. And of course, you want to think about the threats, but not necessarily the external threats from other people, but think about the threats that can affect your business that you will contribute to them.
Oh, yeah, that's important because those are the ones that we have control over.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
And they evolve every quarter. That's why I say do one every quarter because they evolve. You may develop a strength that used to be a threat or vice versa.
Yes. Oh, that's really good. I'm so glad you reminded people that. That's a really good reminder. So, Peachy, what are some of the mistakes that you are seeing online entrepreneurs make when made an investment in their branding, or they feel like they've done some of that work and then they show up with their new product and you're like, what are some of those
Well,
mistakes?
well, I will say they did some of the work, but not all of the work. When we
Oh,
talk about brand identity, a lot of people think about just, how things look. But brand identity has three components, and people don't even realize that. But you have the core, then you have the verbal, and then you have the visual part of the brand identity. So it's a three part. Whereas most of the time, when people talk about brand identity, especially when you're talking about graphic designers and things of that nature, steering people toward building their brand, they're only focusing on the visual. And they may tell people, yes, you need to know your brand personality, but they don't talk about the brand voice. So you need to have that foundational aspect. You need to know your mission and your vision and all those things and your brand personality to move into the verbal part of your brand identity. Your brand voice and your brand personality, they have to work together in order to actually drive your visual. And
mhm.
people don't even know that it's three parts to brand identity. People always go directly to the visual and only take certain components of the other two, where you really need all three.
Yes, absolutely. I think having all three in place, supporting each other will just automatically enhance your visibility. And I think it'll help people connect much quicker to who you are. And so you lessen the scroll of people just passing you by. So I think that's really great advice.
Yeah, people don't know that you have to have your brand voice in place. If you don't have a brand voice, how will you know what to say to them? Or how will
Mhm.
you know what to put on an advertisement? How will you maintain consistency? And how can you hire a copywriter to actually write for you if you don't know how you're supposed to sound?
Right. Oh, that is powerful. That is powerful
Yes.
right there. If you don't know how you're supposed to sound, you can't hire a copywriter to write for you. So I think that that's really important for people to be thinking about as they're developing that brand. So tell us a little bit. What are some other pieces of advice that you would give to folks who are just starting out?
Well, one of the things I would say is be true to yourself.
Hmm.
Again, this is your journey. It's not a race. A lot of times people, especially new entrepreneurs or people who are dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, they're looking at things through rose-colored glasses. And I talk about
Yeah.
this a lot, on my podcast. And you have to think beyond the rose-colored glasses. You have to really be, you have to be authentic with yourself. You
Hmm.
have to know that you know that you know that this is something you want to do. A lot of times people see all these online entrepreneurs making all this money, but if they have not done the work to successfully build a strong brand, if they don't have that foundation, it's not going to last.
Hmm.
And I think people kind of misconstrue when we're talking about building a brand because all they're thinking about is the money, or they're thinking about, how this person made all this money, but they don't realize that those people have stories as well. And a lot of times people don't tell you the entire story. They don't tell you
Hmm.
that they had eat ramen for 4 years
Right.
to get where they are, or they didn't tell you that they actually had investors with seed money. A lot of times some of the pieces of the puzzle are missing. And so people kind of look at those people, their competitors, and they think that they had it all together. And that's definitely not the case.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's true, and it's important for us not to make assumptions about
Right.
other people, other business owners, and when we're comparing our business to theirs, because yes, their journey was different, but don't make assumptions because we don't know exactly what they went through to get there. And sometimes the brand alludes to it, but it doesn't
Yes.
always tell the whole story.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I tell people all the time, just be authentic and true to yourself. And again, that's why you need to know the why behind the why. That's
Hmm.
exactly why.
Hmm. And what
It's a
about
think
for
apart.
brand? Yeah, yeah. And what about the brand that's kind of in their sophomore year? They've launched. There's now a couple of team members. There maybe let's use a business coach or a life coach, for example, and they're doing really well. They've got a team member. They've got several offerings. What advice do you have for someone in that sophomore year who's maybe plateaued and is ready to level up? How can your brand voice and all those things really make a difference in what's next?
Okay, well, first I would say pace yourself. Congratulations that you've made it to this point, but you have to
Mhm.
pace yourself. And one of the things that's very important is you have to start thinking like a big brand.
Mhm.
Mindset is everything when you're building your brand, and you have to start thinking beyond where you are now. Again, that's one of the reasons why you need to know your vision, and you make tweaks to your mission. You make tweaks to how you're going to get to that vision, and you add things along the way because it's consistently evolving. But once you're in that place where it's time to scale up, you have to, again, back to the authenticity, you have to be authentic with yourself to understand the level of scalability that you want to attain and that you're able to attain at that moment. You don't want to jump out there thinking that you're going to scale like a lot and you're just not ready. So that's why I
Mhm.
say you have to pace yourself. And while you're pacing yourself, that's the time to start tweaking your brand voice, tweaking all those things that kind of drive your brand.
Mhm.
Your brand voice is going to be completely, it's not going to be, the message is not going to be different, but the way you deliver it should be very different when you're at that position as opposed to when you first started.
Yeah. No, I think that's important because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs during COVID, they did a great job of pivoting or creating a business, and now all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they find themselves with a team, and their brand doesn't always resonate the same way it did back then, and so we have to revisit. I guess that's why that SWOT analysis every quarter is so important.
Very important. Yes, and
Mhm.
also people need SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that you can actually look at them and determine, is this the process that we're still using or is it different now?
Mhm.
When you bring these team members on and you want to acclimate them to your brand, you should have all your brand guidelines in place. And that's for graphic designers, for your copywriters, for all those different people. When you're at that level, you should definitely have your brand guidelines in place.
Yes, so important. And it's not just your colors, it's your fonts, it's your style book, it's, what word are you
Yes.
going to capitalize, all of that good stuff.
Yes, the typography is very, very important. I don't think people place much emphasis on that, but when you notice the big brands, they use the same fonts. All the things are the same size. How you use the logo. Maybe you can't use it in a block. You
Mhm.
can only use it singularly or only on the right side. And all of those things are very technical details that a lot of people don't understand, but it's all part of building your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Peachy, what have I not asked you that I need to ask you so that our viewers and our listeners can get the most bang for their buck when they're thinking about their brand?
I don't know. I can talk about branding all day.
I
No.
know, I love it. I love your energy because it's so on point.
Well, one of the things I will say is, in terms of branding, no, this is a perfect one. When you're starting your brand, and even when you're, to the point where you want to scale, make sure that you're branding for your audience and not for yourself.
Ooh,
I see a lot
yes.
of people, people choose their brand colors because it's something that they want, and it totally disconnects with their audience. Or, they speak like they're talking to a friend themselves, but that's not how your brand starts. So, I
Mhm.
tell people all the time, like, think about the Allstate people. Think about Mayhem, which is for more the millennials, and then you have the older guy who's talking to a totally different demographic. The message is the same, but the way that it's delivered is completely, completely different. So that's what I
Mhm.
would say to someone
Yeah.
in this right now.
Talk about disconnections. I'll tell you real quick. I saw some content for a CPA, and the font was in Comic Sans, and I was
Oh,
like, "Okay, CPA, I don't know that I'm going to trust you with all my money when your
correct.
font is Comic Sans."
Right. And a lot of people don't even realize, even when you're building a logo, like, you should have your brand personality and brand voice in place to actually develop that logo. and develop your colors, because it's an emotional connection. Brands
Mhm.
build emotional connections, and that's why you see most hospitals and insurance companies in the blue category. You
Mhm.
know, you see certain industries, they use red. Food industries use a lot of red.
Mhm.
There is a color psychology, an entire color psychology behind why certain colors work better than others, and
Mhm.
that's including your logo.
Yes. Oh, so true. So true. Peachy, how can people work with you? You've given us some great content, some great tips, and I know you've got some really cool projects. We're going to put your website up so that people, our viewers, can take a look at that. And for our listeners, that'll be in the show notes. But Peachy, how can people connect with you?
Well, as a copywriter, I'm at the Write Mixx, but Color Me Brand is a business and brand ecosystem that I created that has master classes, and it teaches people how to do the work. And
Mm.
so we just launched a membership at Color Me Brand, but it's called Prism. And so you can find out more information on Color Me Brand or go to bit.ly/Prism now. And right now we're doing a founders member special, and today's prices will not be the same come December 2nd. But I welcome everybody because we have hot seats, we have master classes, master classes that are paid, but if you're in the membership, they're absolutely free. And you'll see on the Color Me Brand website, those master classes are already set out through half of 2023. So
Oh,
you'll
that's
get all the
fantastic.
things. Yes. So all of that is there on the site. You'll be able to see it. But we have round tables, we have a clubhouse style audio thing, we have a book club where we're actually talking about business books and things and how it will impact you in business and branding. And so it's just a really safe space for entrepreneurs to roll up their sleeves and get things done.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited we got to connect, Peachy. Thank you so much for all the
You're
great
very
content. It's
welcome.
been wonderful having you on.
Thank you so much.
All right, that wraps up this episode of Saturday Soundbites. I hope you enjoyed all the great content that Peachy Williams had to share with you guys. Make sure you check her website out. Again, the link is in the show notes. She's got some great content that it's going to help you with your branding and really get you started. Don't forget those quarterly SWOT analysis. I want to make sure that everybody remembers that because I will be implementing it. You can guarantee it. So, with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode of Saturday Soundbites. As always, you can find me at veronicavsofer.com. If you are listening to the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of Saturday Soundbites. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments and we will be sure to connect. So, I'm going to wrap up this episode by sending you lots of positive energy and light.